Thank you very much, John Roberts. It is time for final practice for tomorrow's Dickies 500. Just 3 races remain. The 2009 chase for the Sprint Cup. Texas Motor Speedway, the Great American Speedway, hosting this event this race weekend. Cars roll out and we roll to the garage. Wendy Venturini first.
Well, thanks, Steve. In between the 2 practice sessions, the 39 team was really busy here in the garage area. Now, they started the first practice session with the same setup as their teammate, Tony Stewart. As we saw in the first practice session, it did not work for Ryan Newman. He hit the bumps a little bit too much. It was too bouncy. He did not like the feel of the race car, and he was not confident about his race car. In between this break into this next session, they changed everything: track bar, truck arms, shocks, springs. They threw a whole new package going back to what they originally had here at Texas, but it's the same battle that Ryan Newman fights when he comes to this racetrack: the bumps, the bounces. But one thing we know for sure, he did not like the setup that his teammate Tony Stewart had. They're going back to what they know and what Ryan Newman is confident with this race car. We'll see how this changes in the second practice. Bob?
Well, Wendy, a funny story about Juan Pablo Montoya. I spoke to crew chief Brian Patty in the interim between the practice sessions here, and he was telling me that it was a little loose. Just at that time, Juan Pablo Montoya walked up and he said, "A little loose, come on now." Brian Patty said, "Oh, come on, it's not that bad." He says, "You want to ride with me? I'll show you how loose it is." He says, "Listen, in Days of Thunder, they told Cole Trickle, loose is fast." He says, "Shake and bake, baby." What do you think about that, crew chiefs?
I don't know if loose is fast at this 1.5-mile racetrack. It may be fast at some racetrack, especially in the movies, but nice and free, maybe just turning well, but not loose. Will not get it at this place.
Back in the day, they'd lay that spoiler back.
Yeah, back in the day. That's right. You got wings right now, and you better get that driver happy. Otherwise, he's going to be hollering and screaming for 500 miles, and that could be a long afternoon. No, I'm with Larry. Free, maybe. Loose, no.
Let's take a look at him as he goes down the back straightaway. Let's watch the hands. The hands do not lie. He's having to kind of work it back a little bit to the right. I don't know that I'd call that loose. Maybe a little on the free side right there. And I know coming off turn 4 in that first practice is where he really had his hands full a couple of times.
Well, I'm really curious to see how he does off of turn 2, because that seems like that's been a trouble spot for a lot of drivers here this week.
A little bit snap, a little bit
loose, yeah.
A little bit twitchy right there on the exit of turn 2. Again, what makes this place so unique, and we're starting to see him move up the racetrack a little bit, is 24 degrees of banking.
No, that is not. Come to the garage area.
Yeah.
I want to work on that race car.
Well, and there's a good chance, there's a strong chance the 88 car where he was at kind of magnified things, because that takes a little bit of rear downforce away from that car.
Jeff, let's take Ryan Newman out of the equation.
They're both loose.
Well, and again, the 42 was tucked up behind the 88 that time.
Jeff, let's take Ryan Newman out of the equation for just a second, because we know he's chasing the racetrack. If your car is handling good, what's an optimum number of laps you want to run in this practice?
I want to try to keep 100 miles maximum on this practice. You know, on both practices combined, I'd like to see 100 miles put on my engine, and I'd like to go to the garage area then, and I'd be a happy camper. Engine man and crew chief combined.
About 50 to 65 laps total.
Well, Bob, we just saw Juan Pablo with a pretty big wiggle. What's he saying now?
Well, Brian Patty changed the springs on this machine before they went back out there, and right now, very unstable for Juan Pablo Montoya. He said it's wicked loose in, but then it's tight to loose throughout the corner. So he tries to turn the wheel, and when he has to turn the wheel a little bit more, it just breaks free to the right. So that's what Juan Pablo Montoya is struggling with, as you guys speculated and saw just a minute ago.
Now, he only ran 11 laps in that first practice. You saw Dale Earnhardt Jr. just drive by him and drive away. I think a lot had to do with, more than likely, they started this practice on the same set of tires that they ended the first practice on. I almost get a feeling that with 18 laps that the 88 car ran in the first practice, they may have started with a little fresher tires.
Wendy, what's the latest with Ryan Newman?
Well, it was a couple laps for Ryan on the track, and then he's made it back into the garage. He's 16th in this practice session so far. Tony Gibson asked him as actually it was Ryan Newman that made the call, I'm coming in, and of course Tony Gibson wanted to know if it was loose on the gas. He said, no, I was sideways off of 4. He hit the splitter pretty bad on the bumps as well. So the adjustments, still have to keep fine-tuning those adjustments and work on the ride is what Ryan Newman has requested. A lot of loose race cars out there this afternoon between the morning practice and the afternoon practice, but one thing's for sure, they have picked up a little bit of speed with the old package that they wanted to go back to.
You know, I read some quotes from this race team earlier in the week, and of course they sit there 8th in points as we watch Jamie McMurray, the winner from Talladega. Jeff was, I think, observing him starting to move to the top of the track in 3 and 4. But back to the 39 team, they come in here 8th in the points, 402 points out of the lead. They know the championship is not going to happen. And they basically said for the next 3 races, 3 goals. Obviously win a race. They're one of the few chase teams that's not been to victory lane this year. They want to stay in the top 10 in points, but they're possibly trying things for 2010, especially with the no testing policy.
Like a lot of teams are. You see Jamie McMurray again, as Jeff pointed out, on that high side.
Everybody's starting to search, trying to find exactly where they want to be, but he's still a little bit loose up
Looking
high.
for grip.
Yeah, looking for grip.
Guess who's quickest?
Jimmy Johnson.
And back at Texas Motor Speedway, practice continues. This is final practice for tomorrow's Dickies 500. Jimmy Johnson is the quickest, and Juan Pablo Montoya is not going to sign autographs. He is not going to drive that race car. He is going to sit in the transporter.
He ran 11 laps in the first practice. He just ran 6 laps. Boys, I don't like it. We need to go regroup here.
I'm not driving it.
That's usually when the driver is letting you know, if you want to talk to me, you come up in the truck, because what I got to say, you don't want me to tell you in public.
You know, there's been a lot said about a lot of the movement with crew chiefs over at Richard Childress Racing. Of course, he made the move just a few weeks ago with Casey Mears, Jeff Burton, and moving Doug Randolph up from the Nationwide Series. Actually, look at Clint Boyer here in the 33 car. He's the only RCR driver to work with the same crew chief all of 2009. He's had Shane Wilson since the start of the year.
Clint will start 10th tomorrow, alongside Dale Earnhardt Jr., row 5.
I believe that this race team, that Clint and Shane, I think they went through a learning curve this year. I think you will see that 33 car back in chase contention in 2010. Clint's made the chase the last 2 years. Somewhat of a 4th new race team over there, bringing Shane and Clint together. They started out with such a bang, and then they kind of hit the wall and kind of tapered off, but you're starting to see them rebound and come back to the front now.
Speaking of rebounding, this guy here, I thought he was about to rebound a minute ago. I was watching him over here in 3 and 4, and watch this car here getting off in the corner. Do a little D-do. You see the wheels kind of kick out there. Them hands,
whoa,
those hands.
Whoa.
Catch her if you can, Biff. Catch her if you can.
The good news is Greg Biffle is 4th fastest.
He needs some of that 3M stick-em on them tires.
The bad news is it's going to be pretty hot tomorrow when this race starts, and I think we're going to see a lot of guys in trouble. Even though he's still running windy, I think they've got a little work they need to do.
Well, you hear crew chief Greg Irwin say you're running the heck out of it. Those are good lap times. Of course, no response from Greg Biffle because his hands are so full on that racetrack. The lap times look good, but it's a lot better compared to how their first practice went. He said the car's starting to get a little bit tight off of 4 and then will snap. But the first practice session, he didn't know what to do. That was the exact quote that Greg Biffle gave to his crew chief, Greg Irwin. They worked on the right front in between the 2 practice sessions. They changed both front shocks, and now they're trying this new package for the happy hour, which is so far paying off for them. It looks a little squiggly out there for Greg Biffle, but he's 4th in this happy hour. Bob?
Well, Wendy, Jimmy Johnson is fastest so far in this practice session, but that's not necessarily what they are trying to accomplish. They want to get Jimmy very comfortable in this race car. I spoke to the team during the break, and they said they really want to get the car good over the bumps, and that's what they're concentrating on. They changed a pair of front shocks in the interim between the practice sessions, and now they just changed the left rear shock to try to get Jimmy a little bit more drive coming up off the corner. But speed is not the #1 concern here, guys. Drivability is.
Bob, I am so glad that you're saying that. When we watch Jimmy Johnson, he's running about through the middle of 3 and kind of chopping it across turn 4. A little different line than a lot of guys are running, but Larry McCrummel's talked about it in our very first practice session. The word we're looking for is comfortable. We want to get these guys so they can run long runs, stay consistent with the speed. For this racetrack, again, when it gets hot tomorrow, and he gets slick. We got another race to run this afternoon, the 300-miler. It's going to be tricky when they drop the green flag tomorrow. I'm telling you, Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson are on the right agenda right now. Get it comfortable. I don't care what Greg Biffle and Greg Irwin are doing about speed. They better get that car comfortable. Otherwise, they're going to wear that dry route the first 100 miles.
Yeah, Jimmy, definitely when he moves up the racetrack, I've been watching the practice sheet here. He definitely slows down a little bit, but I think they're trying to just search around. They're trying to see how the car drives running the bottom. They're trying to see how it drives when we run the top. I think they're watching a stopwatch, but I think probably Chad Knaus, his crew chief you see there, is listening more to what his driver will tell him.
Well, to Jeff's point, Jimmy Johnson is the fastest. He's completed 12 laps. The fastest over 10 laps is Tony Stewart.
And Tony's car looks good out there. I mean, when I've watched him run, his car looks like he's getting around like he needs to. It's riding the bumps, and it doesn't look like Tony's really working that hard inside the car.
And we see Carl Edwards here. I talked about this in the first practice session, that this has been a great racetrack for Roush Fenway. In fact, Carl swept the races here last year. Second race was more due to fuel mileage, but still he won the race, and he's run a total of 11 laps. This could be possibly where Carl Edwards gets the victory lane for the first time in 2009.
Yeah, he's won more races here in the Sprint Cup Series than any other driver. He has 3 wins.
Yeah, we've had 17 races with 14 different winners. Carl's won 3 times, Jeff Burton twice, all the other drivers once. I asked Chad Knaus, Booty Barker, and Doug Richard this last night as we were taping NASCAR Performance. They feel like every time you come here, this track is looking for something different, and it's 26 races in between racing here in April and early November.
There's a look at top 10, including Bill Elliott. Our quality in track description for the Texas Motor Speedway. It's 1.5 miles, and Jeff Hammond, she's fast.
She's very fast. It's real tricky, too, because he's got 24 degrees in the corners, and we've already seen it. Exit of turn 2, she drops off to that 5-degree down the back straightaway. A lot of guys get in trouble there, plus the same thing off of turn 4 coming to the front straightaway. Fast little racetrack, and you're going to see high speeds all day long, and Larry talked about it. High sustained RPM, hard on the engine.
You know, I think it's worth mentioning again, too, Jeff Gordon, as you talked about in the first practice, Jeff, sits on the pole position, his 68th pole, his first one of 2009, and that puts him in some pretty rare air. He's up there with Richard Petty, David Pearson, and Cale Yarborough in terms of career poles.
Pretty phenomenal,
I'd say.
I mean, the man has got a Hall of Fame career. I mean, that's all you got to say, Terry. 4-time champion. You've already mentioned the poles, but what he has done and brought to the sport is just, again, it's almost like head scratching.
Well, not that I needed a reminder that we're getting older as we watch Reed Sorensen, but what was the stat? The 17th consecutive season that Jeff Gordon has a pole?
That's the one that blows me away. That's unbelievable. That is tough to accomplish. Obviously, he waited very late in 2009 to get that first pole, but that's pretty unbelievable.
The 02 car right there being driven by David Gilliland from the Joe Gibbs stables. And guys, you know that he's a big Kid Rock fan. Loves rock music, and Kid Rock is his man.
Yeah, this is the second of 3 races that he'll be driving this 02 car. He had a little of his hands full there. She tried to step out. Again, the bumps just kind of magnify things here, and this place has a lot of bumps. He's run a total of 6 laps, now 7, and he's 31st quickest, but he'll be back in this car at Homestead. Bob Dillner.
Well, not the best of situations right now for the pole sitter, Jeff Gordon. These guys are struggling. In fact, in the break, I asked the team, I said, where do you have to get the car better? And they said it would be better to ask, where don't we have to get the car better? Because they are struggling at every part of the racetrack. I said, okay, is it a little tight? Is it tight to loose? What is it? Depending on what we do to the race car right now, it's just all over the place. And it was the same thing on the first run out here for Jeff Gordon as well. So they're going to work on this car. They're changing the trailing arms. They're changing the springs in the rear, the shocks in the front. A brand new setup for Jeff Gordon the next time he hits the racetrack. Because right now the pole sitter is maybe in just a little bit of trouble around this racetrack.
And I think so many cars are maybe fighting loose off the corner. We heard Wendy talk about the 39 car changing trailing arms, and I don't know that they're physically changing the two trailing arms that hook the rear end, but they're changing the location where they mount, because what you can do is lower them down at the front, and that helps the car hook up under acceleration. Or if the car doesn't want to turn and you've got them down, you can move that front pivot point up. So it sounds like a lot of teams here at Texas getting ready to race are playing with where those trailing arms are mounted in the front.
And it can also affect you how you go across the bumps, entering the corner too.
Juan Pablo has decided the break's over.
He's back out of his hauler, back in his race car. But what a lot of fun we had with him. And he just, I don't know, I was telling a radio show this morning, what I love about this guy,
Still all clear, 520.
he tells you like it is. He's not going to sugarcoat it, no matter what you ask him. He will race you clean, but he's going to race you like you race him, and I think he has shown that. And I told him last night during commercial break, please don't change.
Now he's definitely a gamer right there, and I can't believe you were up this morning doing a radio show.
Always, right after I press my shirt.
Which took 7 hours. Come on, Larry, can we tell that real quick, please?
We can. I hung my shirt last night at 9:45 in my bathroom on my shower curtain in my hotel room. They cut the hot water on because it was very wrinkled. When I got up at 5 o'clock, she was still going.
It still had hot water.
I will not say what hotel I was staying at.
I think Juan Pablo right there heard that. He kind of got a little sideways off the turn too.
You're good. You're good. Authority shoot. Authority shoot. No, bring it to me. You just stay in the car. Change left and spring. Stay in the car. Change left and spring. Come to the window. I think I've got another idea.
I think what we're hearing right there, you think it's like double talking. It's the repeaters that some of these teams are using. And we're picking up that function of the radio. Sometimes it's a little frustrating. The teams don't hear it, but we're hearing it.
He's run a total of 11 laps with this 42 car. His fast lap is 29.36. Bob, are they gaining on it?
Gaining on it a little bit, but not exactly to Juan Pablo Montoya's liking just yet. They changed the rear springs and the front shocks prior to this run. And Juan Pablo Montoya did say on the radio, it's just still a little bit loose coming up off. But the funny thing is, talking to the team, they said, you know what? He's never quite exactly happy. He drives the heck out of the race car, gives us good feedback, but we'll just keep on working on it and try to get it better to his liking.
Well, that's what's made him a winner and a champion in how many different forms of motorsports?
Everything he's driven.
Everything he's driven.
I think it's in everything he does.
Including RC airplanes.
And golf.
Kurt Busch and the Miller Lite Dodge. He's going to start third tomorrow in row 2 alongside Tony Stewart. Right now, 12th overall. He has run 15 laps on this 1.5 mile Texas Motor Speedway.
He was 5th quickest in that first practice session, ran a total of 28 laps. He's run 15 in this practice so far. This is a brand new race car they brought for him this weekend.
Coming on in, 185, 220. I don't think that was bad. What do you think? Yeah, not too bad there. Still need to be a little better, but it's not bad.
You hearing Pat Tryson right there, the crew chief of today.
For now.
Pat will be leaving, joining Michael Waltrip Racing next year, but you know, I still think these guys are communicating and doing a good job, and I think this is the kind of race and racetrack that those two, talking about Kurt Busch and Pat Tryson, should excel here tomorrow. I think they'll get the car like Kyle needs, and he understands that.
You bring up a good point, though, Jeff. And we tend to lose sight of the fact, because Jimmy Johnson has been so outstanding, because his excellence over the past 4 years, and the chase drivers too, but there's a lot of other stories happening in the garage that pertain to the end of this season, but more so for 2010. For example, we also had Brad Keselowski on trackside. He's going to run the last 3 races in the 12 car. David Stremme is out. And it makes sense for next season. Larry, as we watch Kevin Harvick, you mentioned yesterday the crew chief swaps that
45.
Richard Childress has continued to make to try to, you know, capture that elusive chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, you never really thought much about the upcoming season until you left the last race of the year. It never even crossed your mind. But whether it's changing crew chiefs, drivers changing, a lot of different things. Maybe you want to try a different style of car. Especially with the no testing that goes on now, you cannot fix your issues and problems between Thanksgiving and Daytona. You have to go to work on them now if you feel like there's something that needs to be worked on. And Richard Childress, you see him right there, is renowned for not being bashful about swapping crew chiefs around.
Now, he or Jack Krause will take a look at the 29 car, come back to pit road, and you talk about cars and things. Believe it or not, this is that new design car that Richard Childress came up with about mid-season.
All right, let's go the other way.
Been running a lot. I think you heard Gil Martin. They tried something, so they didn't like it. They're going to go back the other way. But this car here was recently run at Martinsville, and here it is at Texas. That's part of the new byproducts of this new car. You can race it anywhere. Just do a little fluff and buff on the body, and here you go.
Well, Bob Dillner, how about Bill Elliott, our 1988 Series champion? He is 5th overall.
I tell you what, it's the feel-good story of the day so far, Steve. The Wood brothers and the 21 with Bill Elliott behind the wheel. They're doing pretty good so far in this practice session, but they did tell me that their 5th place on the speed charts is a little bit misconceiving a little bit, because they did put on a set of stickers for this practice session. They usually practice on scuffs and go out there, but they did put on some stickers. However, Bill Elliott says the car is so much better than it was when we started the day yesterday. They tried an experimental setup yesterday. It just did not work. They went back to basics, and that's what they're working on right now. Bill Elliott says the car is rolling over on the nose just a little bit, so they changed some of the weight distribution on this car, and they're about to go back out there again once again.
That's exactly what I saw those 2 crew members doing. The frame rail that runs between the left front and the left rear tire there, that's where you have your lead ballast. You know, they try to build these cars as light as possible, but you want to put as much lead ballast as you possibly can. If the car is a little loose, you can push that lead ahead, give it more front percentage. If the car is tight or not turning, you push that lead back and put more weight toward the rear wheels, and it'll help the car to turn. They were moving that lead in that frame rail.
Larry, while you were talking, I'm out on the racetrack. I was watching the 5 car being followed by his teammate now of Jeff Gordon, and you know, Jeff and him were making some changes on that race car to try to get it better. And I think, you know, Mark's car must be pretty decent. He's run quite a few laps, and I think he's pretty. I think he's happier with his race car than Jeff is with his. But right now they're following each other. Jeff's following Mark, trying to, I think, figure out where he's getting beat at.
Well, I think Jeff actually let the 5 car go by him where he could watch his 5. I know during commercial break a little earlier, Joey Logano had been following Mark Martin. And that's a good way you can, if you are maybe not where you want to be with your race car, maybe a good way to tell is follow somebody that seems like they're running pretty good.
And you get an opportunity to see, where's he beating me at? Is he beating me getting into the corner? Am I driving in too deep and he's beating me getting off? All these things. Plus, you also get an opportunity to watch the car. How is it riding the bumps? Because if his car looks better, you know these guys are teammates. Hey, whatever shocks he's got, I want.
The only thing you have to be careful, you don't know what someone else has for tires. And when I look at Mark Martin in the 5 car, his lap times look pretty good considering he's run 20 laps in this practice if they've not changed tires. When I look at Jeff Gordon, he's run 14 laps. Actually, his lap times don't look very good right now.
Halfway through this 1-hour practice. Stay with us here on Speed. We'll be right back to Texas. Speed's coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice from Texas is brought to you by the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Tickets now on sale for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Just visit Ticketmaster.com. Sam Hornish in the 77. He's 23rd overall, 18 laps of practice for Sam.
Got a good qualifying run in yesterday, though. He's going to start in the 11th spot with this 77 car.
Got loose.
Heard Kevin Harvick say he got loose, and he may have hit the wall. He said he hit it.
Yeah, but I think fortunately for Kevin, I know his car might be a little bit hurt, but Larry, it looks like it.
Lost it about 3/4 of the way through under wide open throttle.
That old right front fender is pretty flat right now, so they'll definitely, besides the cosmetic, I think we'll get to see it right here. You could see him up out of the groove just a little bit and actually hit it right rear, right front. So they definitely going to have to look at all the suspension, the rear end housing, the trailing arms. It's about the 9th or 10th car that we've documented over the last 2 days that's been into that wall.
Calamity corner.
Well, he said he got loose right in the middle of the corner and kind of chased it out to there, thought he had it saved, and it got away from him right there on the last part. Again, the way that thing flattens out.
And I think you could see right there exactly what you said. You're up in 24 degrees of banking, and the car just lunges to the wall, and it just goes. It's not a smooth transition, and that's one thing that gives this Texas Motor Speedway a little bit of character.
Well, we mentioned it yesterday. You heard the drivers talking about how turn 2 falls off to them. That's almost
probably almost feels like it's off camera.
Exactly, rolling over on that right. And these cars, we've heard this, they have a higher center of gravity.
Exactly, Steve. Good point right there. When that CG comes into play, you got a car a little bit loose and you want to turn it a little bit more. All of a sudden, that CG becomes an enemy and just pulls you into that outside safer barrier.
I think we'll get a look at riding along with Kevin Harvick as he hits the wall. That's not good. That's going to leave a mark.
Well, the good thing about it was I never saw the wheel move when he hit the wall.
Hey, tonight here on Speed 8 Eastern, it's the World Finals for the World of Outlaws in Charlotte, North Carolina, the dirt track right across Highway 29 for the Lowe's Motor Speedway, and it's only appropriate that we would choose to promote that with Tony Stewart.
I'd say that man will be tuned in and watching very closely and intently.
Scott Bloomquist and Jason Myers both won last night on the dirt track.
Tell you what, Larry, watching Tony inside that little race car of his, he looks pretty comfortable in there. Nice little tug to the left side of the thing, not a lot of work back to the right.
He's run a total of 23 laps, 20th quickest, but I like his lap times right now, Bob.
Well, good news, bad news for Kevin Harvick. The bad news, well, we can see it. He's got a lot of damage to the right side of the car. Now, the good news is the fact that there's no real structural damage to this car. Gil Martin, they popped over the hood. They actually looked up underneath the right rear, and there really is not any damage. It's all cosmetic. So they're fixing the crush panels inside the right rear quarter panel right there, and they're trying to smooth out that right rear quarter itself. So really, it's just body damage to the Kevin Harvick machine right now. You don't want to have it happen at all, especially not late into the session, but at least they don't have to fix anything chassis-wise or shock-wise or A-arm-wise on this car. It's all just making it look pretty again for tomorrow's race and getting the air to work over that right rear quarter panel.
Yeah, all you want to do is make it effective right now.
Again, Larry, watch here when he hits the wall. Watch the steering wheel. I mean, you see him catch it, but you didn't see the wheel get jerked in his hand. That's one thing I was watching for, because usually if you hit the front tires very hard, it'll all but snatch the wheel out of the driver's hand, and he was able to hang on to it. So not a real hard to the right, lick to the right front. Now the back of the car, yeah, it looked a little bit more severe, but the back of the car is a little more sturdier. It can take that kind of abuse. So fortunately, it looks like it's going to be just cosmetics and possibly put another set of tires on that number 29 car, and he can go back out there after they make a few adjustments to the handling of the 29.
They definitely want to get him back out there, though, because that car was definitely too loose for him to drive.
We talked about Brad Keselowski. David Stremme, of course, started the season in that number 12 for Roger Penske, but Brad Keselowski will compete in the final 3 races of this season in that car.
And the good thing about it right there is we watch Roland McCauley come down off the transporter. I like the new paint look. I really do. You know, the little going white, red, and black like they've done, or blue. And his nationwide car next year, remember? Last night on trackside, they debuted it, the new discount tire number 22. So big weekend for Mr. Keselowski.
But Steve, you mentioned it earlier. If there was a team that probably needed to go ahead and get into 2010, it was this team. They were looking for their still looking for their first top 10 finish of the year. It was known a few weeks ago that Brad was going to be in the car. He'd already done some testing with them. So he did the Goodyear tire test. So why not go ahead and make this change now? As we watch Joey Logano, Joey got a pretty decent qualifying run in yesterday. He's going to start 14th, but only 38th quickest in this practice session. We've had 41 of our 43 cars that's in the field practice. We know one car that's not practiced. John Andretti lost an engine yesterday 5 laps into practice and actually had another engine problem about halfway through that first practice this morning.
Jimmy Johnson still with the quickest lap. Tony Stewart the best 10-lap average. Wendy.
Well, here in the 12th garage, Brad Keselowski, you see him chatting with Roy McCauley here in the garage area. We've documented the crew chief changeover at the 18, but the driver change here at the 12 starting this weekend at Texas. You're listening to a lot of questions and answers happening on the radio communication here in the 12 car this weekend. A lot of questions by Roy, a lot of answers by Brad. Roy wants feedback on what he feels and how much they need to change. They wanted to go back to what they had yesterday. Brad said, no, we're quite a bit better than what we had yesterday in the race trim. Brad says the car feels really good right here. And it's getting better and better as this practice session goes on. You can also see the communication building up as the weekend goes on. That's what's really cool to watch that happen. Now, they've had a little bit more wear on their tires this weekend than they had in the spring. And again, it's a lot to do with the driving styles and how different they can be. He qualified 35th for tomorrow's race, but he definitely is feeling good about getting a head start for 2010.
And you know, yesterday was the first time that Brad Keselowski has 14 previous starts Sprint Cup. His first one was here a year ago. They didn't have to worry about qualifying. That car, of course, is locked in.
About 20 minutes of practice left. This is the final practice for the Dickies 500. NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot. Get you fired up for tomorrow's Dickies 500. John Roberts, Kenny Wallace, Jimmy Spencer, Wendy Venturini, and handsome Hermie Sadler. It all begins at 12:30 tomorrow. All right, well, later today, 3:30 Eastern, when LSU beats Alabama.
You sound pretty confident with that little.
Then Texas will jump up to #1 in the nation. Hook 'em horns.
You know what? Being #1, being #2 right now, it's like who leads the points after the Daytona 500. It does not matter.
Saying.
Here's our buddy Elliott Sadler, a little trackside buddy, back in a Dodge this week. Had a great run in that Ford last week. Ended up with a top 10 finish, but he's back in the Dodge for the final 3 races. But his teammate A.J. Allmendinger, as Richard Petty Motorsports prepares to migrate to Fords for 2010, that 44 car will be a Ford these final 2 races. A.J.'s actually pretty good in this practice session. He's run a total of 20 laps, 11th quickest.
Bob Dillner.
Well, A.J. Allmendinger and this team very happy with this race car right now. Like a lot of people, it's just a little tight in the center, but A.J., Mike Shiplett, the entire crew really adapting well. And I think the funny thing is here, we've heard all the stuff about Yates Racing and RPM and this and that. This is a car that actually comes from the RPM stables. All they did basically was put a Ford body on it and a Ford engine in it. So right now they're pretty pleased. 11th on the speed chart so far in this practice session.
Yeah, the car that Elliott drove last week at Talladega was a full-blown Yates car. Really and truly all Wally Rogers and that group did was put the decals on it, put Elliott's seat in it. But this is a full-blown Richard Petty Motorsports car. You see the King there. Of course, when you think about Richard Petty, you think about Dodge and Mopar, but in 1969, Richard made 48 of his 50 starts in a Ford and won 9 races that year in a Ford.
What year was it the King won 20? Was it 27 races? 1967?
Something like
Yes,
that.
1967.
13 in a row.
Or something like that.
It's great seeing that paint scheme out there. A.J. Allmendinger flying the colors.
Robbie Gordon in this 7 car. We saw him in the first practice with smoke bellowing out the back of it after about 4 laps. It appeared that, and Jeff Hammond speculated and was right, that maybe they overfilled the level of the transmission fluid after qualifying. And Robbie, a lot like yesterday's practice, looking pretty good with this 7 car. 7th quickest. Got our buddy Doug Richard on board, his 3rd race this weekend as the crew chief for Robbie.
Yeah, I talked to Doug, last night, and he said that, they were pretty happy when they unloaded. So Robbie was happy. Said he's pretty good right now. Run 15 laps so far, looking pretty consistent.
Bob Dillner, what can you add on the 7 car?
Well, here's what they're working on right now. This car with Doug Richard as the crew chief is really good from the get-go. Very fast for the first couple laps, but it's not so consistent on the long haul. So that's what they're trying to work on with the number 7 machine right now. It's getting better and better, but we're running out of time.
Yeah, we only got about 15 minutes left in this final practice, and for some guys it'll be a much needed relief, and other guys it kind of like they'd like to have another 15 hours, not 15 minutes.
It's probably not what Doug Richard and Robbie Gordon want to hear. They're here, I'm sure, to try to win a race, but what they need is 3 solid, good, non-eventful finishes these last 3 races, regardless of where it's at.
We'll take a break for the Texas Motor Speedway. Stay with us here on Speed. Marcus Ambrose looking for a little speed. The 47 car, just 35th overall. Marcos working on his 18th lap of practice.
You know, we talked about this yesterday, but honestly, I think it's been underrated what this race team has done this year. You know, they've had some top 5s, some top 10s. They've not had a lot of DNFs, but sitting 18th in the points. And to me, what makes that so special, it's really a first-year team, even with their affiliation with Michael Waltrip Racing. But if you look at all the teams they are in front of, the 88 team, the 29 team, there's a lot of good race teams behind this group as far as the Sprint Cup Series points.
Talk to the team owner, Tad Geschichter. They have a technical alliance with Michael Waltrip Racing for the next 2 years. And, you know, early in the season, that 47 car actually had, including here at Texas Motor Speedway, had a good run going. Tad said we had some engine problems early on that we had to sort through, and you know, they might be even higher in points had that not plagued them.
Maybe well sitting inside the top 15.
Well, guys, you know, it's kind of funny, you know, as we look at David Reagan here in the UPS car, you touched on the fact about something overlooked or a surprise. This year has been a surprise in a lot of different ways, I think, for a lot of the teams. Think about it like this, the 14 to 39, an upstart team, Tony Stewart's winning races, Ryan Newman, both those cars making the chase. We've already mentioned the 47 car and the 42 of Juan Pablo Montoya. I mean, basically, you know, nobody expected them to compete because of all the changes and turmoil they went through during the offseason. The 00, also Michael Waltrip Racing, great year. They had an outside shot of making it in there, as well as the 83 car of Brian Vickers. A lot of surprises this year, I think, from guys we didn't expect to have such a really strong year in 2009.
On the flip side, to me, that's been one of the more unpleasant surprises.
Yep.
The 6 car, David Reagan, almost made the chase last year, and this year, after 33 races, 27th in the points, only 2 top 10 finishes.
Bob has more on the 6.
Well, guys, you're right. David Reagan and Jimmy Fenning, the crew chief, they really need a good run to close out this season at some point. But here's the situation. They think they have a very good race car, but what is surprising is they've had 28 laps on the racetrack right now, but they've done them about 5 or 7 laps at a time. They really don't have a long run presence on the racetrack to give David an accurate representation of what that car is going to be like on the long run. So right now they're trying spring and shock combinations, but they don't know how good it's going to be on that long run, Wendy.
Carl Edwards is 32 laps into happy hour at second fastest right now. He has been very pleased with this car this Saturday afternoon. Now, they made a right rear spring change in between those 2 practice sessions, and now in this final session, they have made very small changes in the right front and the left rear. They are fine-tuning this race car. I talked to car chief PK, and he said, we came here with a really good car off the truck, and when you start off with a good car, you can spend more time fine-tuning the small things on this race car. I asked about the atmosphere right now with this team. He said we are very relaxed. You see a lot of teams thrashing in this garage area when things aren't going so well in happy hour. Not the case for the 99. They are very pleased in this happy hour.
She referred to PK, that's Pierre Cattell, car chief from the number 99. Been around for a long time. He's been a crew chief, won a nationwide championship before he became a car chief on this number 99. See Carl working pretty hard inside that number 99. If it's handling like he wants to, I need to do a little bit more work on Carl to get it exactly right.
7 minutes left.
7 minutes left in this practice. But I also want to go back to the number 6 car. Talked about Jimmy Fenning. Rumors having it right now in the garage area. Jimmy's going to wind up going to an R&D position and look for Donnie Wingo, who won the race last weekend as crew chief for Jamie Murray, to probably wind up being the crew chief on the 6 car for David Reagan in 2010. There's Jimmy. Long-time veteran of the sport.
A long time.
Yep.
We'll come back with a final session of practice here in Texas. Jimmy Johnson, 38 laps. 39 now for that 48 team.
I've been watching this 48 car, and I believe what Chad Knaus and that group did is they ran a substantial amount of laps, and then they came in and they put fresh tires on this car just a few laps ago. Now, if I go back to the first practice, he ran 26 laps. He's about to complete 40, so he's right there at about 66 laps, which equals roughly 100
Well,
miles.
over 100 miles right there, which is permissible.
But the car looks good. This is the same car. He sat on the pole and was so dominant at Dover back in September.
Well, Bob, has Jeff Gordon had any success in this practice?
No, he really hasn't. He's down here in the garage area with his helmet on. He hopped out of the car, kept his Hans on, and they put this car up on the scale pans. He is waiting to get back in there with just minutes to go in this practice session. This team has been busting their butt to get the car right. They've changed shocks and springs. They're scaling out the car right now. They need one more run because they have not been happy with this car at all. So that's what Jeff Gordon is waiting for right now. He's hoping to hop back in the car and just get a couple more laps with this setup. Otherwise, they'll go into tomorrow with a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah, he's got only about right at 4 minutes to get out there. This is a car that I don't know that I've necessarily been watching the practice sheet, but I've been watching the car, the one car of Martin Truex Jr. And we have a sheet that, tells who's running the fastest lap. And Martin Truex Jr. is 10th quickest. Jimmy Johnson is the quickest. But what I'm liking is I look at the 5-lap average. I look at the 10-lap average. This one car looks awfully good. This has been a good racetrack for Martin Truex Jr. And again, like a lot of agendas in the garage area, we know that Martin Truex Jr., before he moves on to Michael Walter Racing, would love to end his stint of years racing with Kevin Bono Mannion and that group with some good runs here to close out the year.
Yeah, to your point, Larry, he's third in the 10-lap averages behind Tony Stewart and Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Carl just looks good. Looks like it's turning good.
Wendy.
And Carl Edwards is done with his happy hour. Carl, you seem happy because the car is fast out there.
Yeah, it's pretty good. This half-lap Fusion is the fastest we've been in a long time. We qualified 6th and second on the board right now. It looks like the 48's real fast, but we're pretty good. Matt looked pretty good. The thing about the race tomorrow will be the, going from daytime to nighttime. Be kind of interesting and, or at least darker than this and faster than this. So we're gonna try to figure out what we're gonna do, but it's good. The old duck's running,
All right, good luck to Carl Edwards, who has 3 wins here at Texas in the Cup Series. Steve.
Roush Fenway, they've got 12 wins total here in all 3 series. And Steve, what I'm seeing, I see 3 of the Roush cars right up there in the top 6, Edwards, Biffle, and David Reagan.
Carl Edwards second, Greg Biffle fourth, David Reagan 6th. Surprisingly, Matt Kenseth has been struggling a little bit in this practice.
Well,
27th right now, but he
was well on the right-hand side of the board earlier, and I think they finally put some tires on that car, and he went back out and he ran some more because his fastest lap was on lap 23, and he's run 35 laps total, Steve. So I think, what Carl's seen about the 17, I think they were really working on a long run and trying to see what their tires were doing. So they were giving up, I think, a lot of fast laps to get the car balanced. And that's the kind of racer he is. He's not worried about that one fast lap. He's worried about my car staying under me for the long haul.
The 24 car, Jeff Gordon, may be the last car to get out on the racetrack before they shut him off, because we only have it about a minute to a minute and a half. He's only going to get about 2 or 3 laps, but as much as they've been scrambling, they'll be glad to get there.
Anything, because all the changes they made, if they can get a direction, if this gives them an opportunity to make some decisions based off of these changes, that's all Steve Letarte and this number 24 team are looking for.
And we have to say it, because 2 or 3 laps could make the difference for tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And on top of that, guys, he does have a teammate to the top of the board. Whether or not they can learn anything from the 48 car, I'm sure they'll be comparing notes. The engineers will be talking afterwards. That's another big plus that they have in the Hendrick camp, is they've got some good race cars to help them figure out their problem.
Well, Jeff, the 88 car is good too over the 5 and 10 lap average, second quick.
It's not bad.
And it looks like Brad Keselowski wins the award for the most laps at 55 laps in this practice.
Practice coming to an end here at the Texas Motor Speedway. Stay with us here on Speed. Thanks for joining us.